Chapter 17. Taksim at Dawn, Kisses with No Meaning. A few weeks after learning of the girl who jumped, I found myself once again wandering Istanbul's streets in the early hours. It was that mysterious sliver of time before dawn, when the city was neither fully asleep nor truly awake, bars just closing, first buses revving up. I was heading toward Taksim Square, a place I had come to see as both a refuge and a trap. At night, Taksim Square hummed with neon lights and throbbing music from clubs. Drunk tourists staggered around the statue in the center, Turkish flags rustling in the breeze. By dawn, the square took on a different hue, muted pinks and oranges in the sky. The shops shuttered, the once loud bars quiet. The only people were cleanup crews and the occasional straggler, people like me, exhausted from a night's labor I never wanted. I stepped onto the wide pavement, noticing the wet shimmer from the street-washing trucks that had just passed. A few pigeons pecked at crumbs left by last night's revelers. My legs throbbed from hours in heels, my throat dry from forced conversation. The city smelled of sour beer, stale cigarettes, and a faint promise of morning bread from nearby bakeries. That ephemeral hush was what drew me to Taksim at dawn. In those moments, I could pretend the city was kinder, gentler. I could close my eyes and imagine a normal life, one where I had just stepped out for an early walk instead of stumbling away from a client's bed. As I approached a low stone wall near the square, I spotted a group of foreign men, obviously still drunk, swaying on unsteady feet. They beckoned me with slurred voices, half in Turkish, half in English. I forced a polite nod, not wanting confrontation. My mind flashed to how easily they might manhandle me if I lingered, so I drifted away, hugging the perimeter. I overheard them exclaiming about the best night ever, with no sense of how many women they might have used or harassed. Taksim was often like that at dawn, illusions of fun trailing from the clubs, while girls like me tried to slip by unseen. A particular memory flashed in my mind, the phrase, kisses with no meaning. That was how Zara once described the fleeting, sloppy kisses exchanged in dark corners of clubs or backseat taxis. They often left a sour aftertaste, nothing genuine, just an empty transaction. I had endured so many of those meaningless kisses that I had lost track, men pressing their lips on me like stamping a ticket, or me leaning in for a quick peck if it guaranteed a higher tip. Back in the early days, I found it humiliating but not physically painful. Over time, it wore on me more than actual violence, the sense of hollowness, how each kiss had no sincerity, just a negotiation of power. Taksim was rife with such kisses. You would see couples making out against lampposts at 3 a.m., only to part ways with blank stares at dawn. Despite the emptiness, sometimes I remembered a half-friendly kiss from a naive tourist who thought we shared a spark. I would fake a smile, letting him believe we connected, but it was always an illusion. My heart roiled with guilt afterward. Those kisses were my daily bread, the currency of survival in bars or side streets. No real meaning, just a fleeting ruse. At dawn, Taksim laid it bare. You would witness parted lovers, or half-lovers, trudging separate ways. They rarely exchanged numbers, never asked for more. If they parted with a kiss, it dissolved into the morning mist, a meaningless gesture swallowed by the city's indifferent air. Amid these reflections, I recalled an incident from a few nights earlier, a moment that still left me uneasy. I had left a club near Taksim after midnight, heading to a client's private party. My phone's battery had died, so I had only a scribbled address on a slip of paper. I took a back alley that twisted into a steep side street. The numbers on the buildings were barely visible in the dim light. A group of men loitered by a parked car, eyeing me. My heart pounded, but I pressed on, hugging the shadows. Finally, I found a door matching the address, or so I believed. My knocks echoed in the silent corridor. No answer. I tried again, uneasy. Then the door opened a crack, revealing an older woman in a headscarf. Her expression startled. I realized, too late, I had knocked on the wrong door. She stared at me, confusion shifting to alarm. In halting Turkish, she asked who I was looking for. Flustered, I apologized, explaining I had the wrong address. Her eyes flicked over my tight dress, smudged makeup, my posture that screamed late-night business. Her gaze held a mix of pity and disapproval. I stammered, turned and fled before she could speak again. That small mishap left me shaken. The woman's face stayed with me. In my mind, I conjured a scenario of how she might judge me, a lost girl in a seedy alley at night knocking on random doors. My life in Istanbul felt precisely like that, always one misstep from danger, forever uncertain if the door I knocked on would lead to safety or exploitation. Ultimately, I found the correct address 2 buildings away. The private party turned out to be a modest gathering of men, expecting me to pour drinks and act flirtatious. Another night of meaningless kisses, empty flattery. As dawn neared, I slipped out, relieved to leave their crass jokes behind. The memory of the older woman's startled eyes weighed on me. I had intruded on a normal home, a place that might hold genuine warmth. My presence was a trespass from the city's underworld. That next morning, resting on a bench in Taksim Square, I reflected on the strangeness of it all. I had just spent a night navigating illusions, fake kisses, a wrong door, a party that left me numb. Now, the sunrise cast a gentle glow on the old buildings, painting them with pastel colors. Street cleaners swept away trash from the night before. The city looked almost innocent, but I knew better. Taksim at dawn was a fleeting facade. The square would soon fill with people hustling to work, ignoring leftover shards of last night's debauchery. Tourists would snap pictures, never imagining the labyrinth of cruelty that emerged after dark. I closed my eyes, letting the early sun warm my face. For a moment, I pretended I was a normal girl waiting for a bus, maybe heading to a day job in a cafe. My mother might be at home making breakfast. The man who abused us did not exist in that fantasy, nor did Mustafa, Bekir, or the countless men who demanded my time. Just a few seconds of daydream, enough to remind me I was still human. Then a street vendor's call jolted me back. "Simit, fresh simit," my belly growled. I rummaged in my purse, found a few coins, and bought one. The vendor gave a kindly nod, possibly guessing I'd had a rough night. Sometimes small gestures in Taksim felt like salvation. As I munched the simit, I observed a young couple stumbling across the square, arms around each other for support. The girl wore a short skirt, hair disheveled. The boy reeked of stale beer, face flushed. They paused at a corner, sharing a sloppy kiss. Even from a distance, I sensed it was one of those kisses, a leftover from the night, not a promise of morning romance. Sure enough, once the kiss ended, the boy waved half-heartedly and staggered off. The girl stood there a moment, watched him go, then shrugged and walked in the opposite direction. Neither looked back. A perfect example, Taksim's dawn kisses, meaningless beyond the moment. It reminded me of my own nights filled with forced kisses, or half-sincere ones I gave to men for an extra tip. All illusions, no substance. A pang of longing flickered in my chest for a real kiss, someone who'd see me as more than a commodity, who'd brush my hair aside gently, wanting to protect me instead of own me. But that felt impossible in Istanbul's current reality. Eventually, I rose from the bench, deciding to catch a bus back to our apartment. My mother would likely be pacing, worried, or maybe she would be folding her stash of currency, praying for an escape. My legs ached as I boarded the bus, ignoring stares from passengers. I slumped into a seat, recalling the earlier fiasco of the wrong door. If I had walked into that home, how would the residents have reacted? Possibly with shock, maybe pity. Could I have glimpsed a normal family's morning routine? Or would they have thrown me out, furious at the intrusion? The line between normalcy and my underworld felt razor thin. It was not the first time I had ended up at the wrong address, though it was the first time I encountered a genuinely normal household. Months before, I had followed a client's directions incorrectly and found myself in a dingy corridor where a different man tried to drag me inside a small room. I escaped by biting his hand, heart pounding. That time, I realized many doors in Istanbul were potential traps. Compared to that terror, the older woman's confusion was almost gentle. A strange gratitude flickered in me that I only faced her shock, not another assault. Even so, my sense of belonging in the city eroded further. I was always an outsider, stumbling through nights that normal folk never saw. When I reached home, the man was out, thank God. My mother rushed to me, worried. "Did you sleep anywhere? Did something happen?" I forced a weak smile, explaining I just waited in Taksim for dawn. She sighed in relief, hugging me. I collapsed on the sofa, letting my eyes shut. My mother brought me a blanket. For once, we did not speak about money or forging passports. I drifted into a fitful sleep, dreaming of that older woman's face behind the door, Taksim's neon glow, and the fleeting kisses I had doled out like meaningless currency. Around midday, I woke to a text from Mustafa. A new event that evening, more opportunities. My stomach churned. Another parade of men wanting amusements, likely culminating in sloppy kisses and groping. I dreaded each one, but I needed the money. My mother needed the money. Escape was our only priority. I found myself texting a curt acceptance, ignoring the knot in my gut. The city's cogs turned relentlessly, demanding I keep feeding it illusions. That night, I would return to the labyrinth of bars, forced smiles, and meaningless contact. Taksim at dawn would happen again, no doubt, with me trudging through once more. Kisses with no meaning left a deeper scar than I anticipated. Physical violence was brutal, but I recognized it as violence. These kisses, however, felt insidious, like a slow poisoning of intimacy. Each time I parted lips with a stranger, I chipped away at my ability to believe in genuine affection. Zara once warned me, "You'll start to cringe even when someone you love tries to kiss you." She was right. Now, if my mother pressed a loving peck to my forehead in comfort, I sometimes stiffened reflexively. The city had taught me kisses are preludes to demands, not expressions of care. I repeated the Taksim at dawn ritual countless times. Some nights I arrived after a harrowing experience, other nights I was just numb. Always the square glowed in pre-dawn light. Cleaning crews did their silent work, leftover clubbers stumbled around. There were times I found a vantage point, gazing at the Bosphorus faintly visible in the distance. The sunrise would color the water pinkish gold, so breathtaking it made my chest ache. I would wonder how something could be so beautiful in a city that felt so cruel. That dissonance mirrored my inner turmoil. Eventually, I grew to hate the dawn. It revealed the last illusions of the night, peeling them away. Those who parted ways with hollow kisses, those who scurried home alone, those who nursed regrets over a final drink, dawn left them exposed. I too felt exposed, trudging away with no illusions about what I had done for money. My mother asked once if I would prefer a daytime job. I laughed bitterly. In this city, day or night, the illusions remain. The difference is just how openly men flaunt it. She looked pained, hugging me. I recognized the guilt in her eyes, knowing I endured the city's darkest hours for our freedom. Kisses with no meaning, still kisses, I guess, I would sometimes joke to Zara, trying to lighten the mood. She would roll her eyes, blowing smoke. "You deserve real ones," she would say. But neither of us believed we would find them here. Taksim's dawn might be mesmerizing, but it offered no real romance, just leftover adrenaline from nights of empty passion. A final anecdote: one dawn, as I left a building near Taksim, I saw a stumbling young man in a foreign sports jersey pounding on a door. He was cursing in a language I could not identify, hammered out of his mind. The door would not open. Eventually, he slumped against it, sliding to the ground. Possibly, he was at the wrong address, or his friend abandoned him. I felt a pang of empathy. The city had devoured him too in a lesser sense. He mumbled curses, tried knocking again, to no avail. I approached, asked if he needed help, but he only stared blankly. Realizing I could not do much, I backed off. The door remained locked. We were all locked out of something in this city. Me from normal life, him from a safe place. In a sense, we each kept knocking on the wrong door. Now, as I left Taksim on a slow bus, the sky turning from pink to pale blue, I reflected on the cyclical nature of it all. Tonight, the clubs would reopen. Illusions would swirl. Men would buy kisses. Tomorrow dawn, Taksim would again reveal the emptiness behind them. I was stuck in that cycle, waiting for the day a real knock on the right door might lead me and my mother away for good. In the meantime, I carried these memories in my battered heart: the older woman's shocked face, the worthless kisses, the hush of Taksim at dawn. I tried to cling to some shred of self, telling myself that not every door was locked forever. Maybe, in some final sunrise, I'd walk Taksim Square with genuine hope, not the forced illusions. Or maybe I would simply knock once more, bracing for rejection. until I found the right path to leave this city's labyrinth behind.